Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our live stream event, Jim Crow 4.0. My name is Solano County Supervisor Wanda Williams. I serve in the 3rd District. I am the president of the BEO of California. Today, we bring forth a very important topic of discussion. And we have some powerhouse leaders from across the state that will share valuable information and perspectives in hopes to ignite the actions behind resisting the resurrection of Jim Crow. As we move forward with our program, I would like to share a moment and provide our African American ancestry acknowledgement to pay homage to our ancestors who fought the good fight and who are with us today through spirit and truth. We acknowledge and honor our African American heritage rooted in diverse African culture and tradition. We thank our ancestors who overcame slavery, survived Jim Crow laws, and fought courageously for civil rights. Their resilience and determination secure the freedoms and opportunities we have today. We celebrate the immeasurable contributions African Americans have made to every aspect of American life, from science and art to civil rights and community building. We commit to preserving their stories, honoring ongoing contributions, and continuing the work toward justice and equality. May we honor this heritage through our actions and dedication to building a more equitable future for us all. I want to thank you. And at this time, I'd like to turn this over to our Executive Director, Marla Mateen. Marla, take it from here.
Thank you so much, Wanda, and thank you for all the work that you do for community and for the BEO. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
day.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, now at this time, I'd like to take an opportunity to introduce to you all Dr. Angela Williams, who is a national leader in civic engagement, legislative advocacy, community and youth development, with over 20 years of experience as an executive leader and professor in government, public policy, and education. A full-time tenure-track professor, Dr. Williams teaches ethnic studies, African American studies, public policy, and education at American River College, UC Davis, and CSU Sacramento. His published works includes his podcast, This Is How Dads Do It, and it's available on Apple iTunes. As a commentator on the Discovery Channel's documentary on Rodney King, and 2 books set for publication in 2026, Reconstructing Freedom, The Cycles of Black History, and On Target, The Target Boycott and the Black Consumer. At this time, I'd like to bring up Dr. Angela Williams.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Dr. Williams. How you doing?
How you doing, sister?
I'm doing all right.
Appreciate you and Supervisor Williams for asking me to come on and share with such a dynamic group like the BEO. So I'm ready when you are.
All right, take it away.
All right. So today I want to talk to you about a theory that's embedded within Black culture that can be uber useful, particularly for folks that are dealing with the larger question of Jim Crow 4.0. If we can start the slides, I'll walk you through it. So the title of this presentation is Reconstructing Freedom. Obviously, this idea of Jim Crow 4.0, shout out to the BEO leadership for the framing. We're really going to talk about quickly intersecting struggles, advancing racial, economic, social, and human rights. But also one thing to note, this is a portable presentation, meaning the theory that I present to you, please take it away, use it, particularly in this struggle during this Jim Crow 4.0 era that we now live in. Next slide, please. All right. Everyone has heard this phrase, history does not repeat itself, right? You've heard that one. But the latter part, but it does rhyme, is taken from an amalgam between the noted author, Mark Twain, who said history doesn't repeat itself, and also Manning Marable, Columbia professor, scholar, really the father of the Black intellectual tradition, Manning Marable. In his book, Race Reform Rebellion, he presents a part of a theory called the theory of Reconstruction. This is the rhyme of history. All right, next slide, please. Now, what is the rhyme? Well, one of the ways that, in fact, it seems like history is repeating itself is because public policy and the law, public opinion and societal structures really do have deep similarity, right? You can see this. Everyone knows their history, so we can see that slave codes become black codes, and black codes quite literally become the discrimination of the new era that we live in now. The systemic oppression is all rooted all the way back. And so when policy and law, public opinion, and societal structures remain the same, it does seem like history is repeating itself. But that is really just part of the story, because the bigger part of the story is, what do Black folks do based upon this rhyme of history? And how do we script the next verse? Next slide. All right. So the framing for our discussion is a theory. Now, this theory actually is made up of multiple folks, Manning Marable being the first, Race Reform and Rebellion, Michelle Alexander and the New Jim Crow, Audre Lorde and her poetry, right? The oft-quoted statement, if I didn't define myself for myself, I'd be crushed into other people's fantasies and eaten alive. Black feminist orientations, right, as it relates to Angela Davis and so many others make up this theory. It's a simple idea. The theory of Reconstruction is focused on 4 or 5 parts of what seem to be repeating cycles in Black history: conflict, change, backlash, Reconstruction, and Renaissance. Side note, this is actually where I met Supervisor Williams. She was at UC Davis and was in my class, and many years ago, we started to have these discussions, and I'm so glad to see her bring this organization forward, especially during this time, and all of the assistance and help that you bring her and others as well. It's not an organization without all the people. So the conflict is based upon the status of African Americans and other national minorities. This is what Marable says in Race Reform Rebellion. The status is really the legal status, right? Legal status and citizenship has been really a key aspect, not only of progressive movements to ensure that African Americans and other national minorities are citizens, but also the status, even of those that are undocumented, right? The Constitution goes at lengths to actually focus not only on citizens, but inhabitants, right? People that just come to the country and are here are afforded particular rights. So that conflict related to that status changes over time because law, public policy, public opinion, and societal structures change. But sure as you're born, there is a backlash to that change, right? Think about the 13th through the 15th Amendments, the African Americans that are engaged with their allies in the Civil War in 1868, right? It's all ratified. A new world has presented itself. But by 1877, of course, the Klan is involved in the backlash through extra legal measures, lynching, terror, all of it. And it is that backlash. But once again, even when there is a backlash, there is always a reconstruction. And that reconstruction is rooted in how African Americans reimagine their culture. And that reimagining always leads to a bright renaissance. Next slide, please. So this theory of Reconstruction, the core idea, African American history is structured by a repeating generational cycle: conflict, change, backlash, Reconstruction, Renaissance, in which Black communities not only resist coercive orders and edicts and laws, but create new cultural, legal, and institutional realities that seed the next advance of freedom. Next slide, please. All right, let's get right to it. what is Jim Crow 4.0, right? Because the Jim Crow 4.0, first and foremost, using Marable's theory, is a conflict related to the status of African Americans. All of the status that Black folk have built up, right? From surviving the Middle Passage, right? To the election of Barack Obama, all of that has increased the status of African Americans. But what now in this Jim Crow 4.0 is the conflict? Well, it's in three categories: public policy and law, public opinion, and societal structure. We know these. In public policy and law, it's voting rights, erosions, gerrymandering, post-affirmative action access fights, right? Book bans, curriculum gag rules, DEI roadblocks. Is also engaged in the new technology, in AI and algorithmic discrimination across credit, housing, jobs, policing, weak privacy and audit rules. This is extremely important. This question of privacy usually isn't a conversation that we have in terms of African American history, but it's there. It's as a root all the way back to slavery. Status and citizenship contest, selective immigration enforcement, and deportations. In public opinion, well, the lost cause, as you know, has been revived. The lost cause is the idea that the South did not lose the Civil War. This is why during the era of segregation, all those statues went up. None of those statues of Robert E. Lee, as you know, went up during, right, the Confederacy. It was a take us back movement, right? A make America great movement right after the Civil War. But this lost cause metaphor, right? There's a revival of that. We see that everywhere, which includes disinformation, the idea of tech inevitability, right? The idea that everything's going to be fine, right? If we just, again, relinquish our privacy and our point of view to what happens, right? Not only with technology, but Bitcoin and others. We'll talk about that a little bit. And of course, the anti-DEI tropes. In the societal structure, persistent wealth, homeownership gaps persist. People are still suffering post-2008. You don't have to say but two words, and you understand the housing crisis in California, Altadena. This also includes homelessness, which in fact is an African-American issue. In Sacramento County, African-Americans make up 9% of the population, but 30% of the homeless. As Keith Sweat says, something just ain't right. And of course, finally, displacement, right? California, particularly the Black strongholds in California, there is a movement of displacement. So the definition of 4.0 is the old caste structure logics of segregation and slavery are now imbued by new tools, platforms, data, and AI. Next slide, please. The data snapshot. Again, for all of you data geeks out there, man, you are in business, right? Because the data tells us something. Black people are 3 times more likely to be killed by the police. It's a multi-year trend. It's a generational trend. It's a multi-generational trend. As it relates to the white-black wealth gap, the white-black median gap remains large. It's a dollar gap, not just a wealth gap, meaning the cost and the buying power of the Black dollar is different than the white dollar. And again, home ownership. It's the lowest it has been in many years. Of course, we know this from multiple African-American groups. This is important because we have to differentiate the data and disaggregate it so that we understand. What I mean by that is absolutely, right? The history of African-Americans in terms of that kind of discrimination is important, but also new African immigrants who come to the country and suffer the same kind of deleterious effects in terms of home ownership. That is something to pay attention to. In health, we know this, Black maternal mortality and also in censorship. This is becoming bigger and bigger with the cancellation of the 1619 Project in particular. All of these are concentrated on chilling the effect of the rhetorical, educational, and scholarship movement that is essential for Black liberation. Next slide, please. One more data snapshot for California. Again, making this specific as far as home ownership is as we're talking about home ownership, Black California rates, right? The persistent appraisal issue. All of you who are ensconced in real estate will understand that, and credit barriers related to home ownership. Stop and searches, of course, if we look at what's happening in terms of the disproportionate numbers, we can see the police state orientation. In prisons, Black Californians are overrepresented despite overall declines in the prison population, and displacement. Black residents are overrepresented in the homeless population. Also, climate events like Altadena, and we have to start saying that about Altadena. This is not some sort of freak accident. This is not something that is simply disconnected from climate change. All right, next slide, please. All right, one more thing to add to what is this 4.0, this Jim Crow 4.0, the through line of white supremacy. In the earliest manifestations of white supremacy, of course, the then that becomes now scientific racism actually is the foundation for Jim Crow codes, law and order, mass incarceration, algorithmic bias. Why is this important? Because we don't talk about scientific racism. We don't talk about the notion of where this starts. Ibram Kendi, in his text, Stamped from the Beginning, focuses on this. Number two, the through line of white supremacy, it's the same rhyme, but it has a new meter. The myths of inferiority are now laundered through data and code. They are masked, right, in podcast bros who say the deleterious things about African Americans in general, but African American women that stand uncontested. And because we know that this whole journey of Black inferiority, right, this idea starts with scientific racism, that's that echo. So when we see that and hear that, right, we have to recognize what that is. And then finally, the counter strategy. Of course, again, I want to share something with you. Black folks are undefeated. What I mean by that is slavery over, segregation over, neo-segregation, which we are in now, being challenged. So I want to share with you, the thing I really want to leave you with more than anything else is that counter strategy is important. Pairing civil rights enforcement with tech governance, plus the public history of this through line, is going to be important for anyone who's going to put their body in this battle. Next slide, please. The work that is left undone also charts our course in Jim Crow 4.0. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X end up roughly in the same place. Moving from a civil rights orientation to a human rights orientation, King was focused on the Poor People's Campaign. Of course, Malcolm X was focused on bringing the United States of America to the UN. He had organized, again, his organization, the Organization of African American Unity, to pair with his diasporan brothers and sisters with the Organization of African Unity. The charge for 2025, it's got to be rights plus political power plus economic transformation together. Next slide, please. All right. Now, this to me is probably the most important issue. Remember, last slide I said it's got to be all together. We are the beneficiaries of 8 solid traditions of Black political intellectual thought and Black liberation. So it doesn't really matter to me. Again, I'm a scholar in this, so I'm going to say this, right? It doesn't matter to me if you're a moderate, a liberal, a feminist, a womanist, an Afrocentrist, a conservative, a Marxist, a socialist, a nationalist, a Pan-Africanist, or the new category, the most viable new category of the Black intellectual tradition really is the Black consumer. If y'all know about this Target boycott, this is what my book is about, coming out in 2026, you will see the power of the Black boycott. And the power of the Black boycott doesn't have a right, a left, or a center. It is Black people basically saying, right, do not shop where you can't work. When did we start this? Back in Birmingham in 55. So this Black consumer is actually a part of our political intellectual thought, right? What does this really mean? we are in 4.0, and to resolve these issues, to reconstruct and get to the Renaissance, it is a by any and all means necessary strategy. Next slide. Now, I want to share with you one super bright spot. It's land, food, and supply chains. Malcolm told us this, right? Land, the basis for all independence, but it's clear that the Generation X, the boomers, Xennials, Generation Alpha, all of the Black generations that exist, 4 in one time period, are really showing bright spots, green shoots in terms of land as liberation. This, of course, is focused not only on the reverse of Black land lost through farmers, but also, in fact, African Americans starting backyard gardens. This anchor partnering is important in terms of land. If you are in charge of, right, let's say a school, you're a principal, you're a superintendent, you work at a hospital, if there's some arable land anywhere there, let's grow some food. Because growing the food, right, is important, again, for our health and safety, but it is a liberation orientation. It means that we are not relying on anyone but ourselves for ourselves. Seed to stitch, soil to soil to store. Don't just buy it and eat it, sell it, right? And then finally, memory to markets. Public history and arts fuel not only our imaginations, but creates a particular brand. And that African-American brand, which we see in the Harlem Renaissance, it is a forever brand, in fact, perpetuates this notion of we will find ways to reinvent ourselves, reinvent the country, reinvent everything. Next slide, please. All right. So again, just as a refresher, the rhyme across the reconstructions. Marable says there were 3 reconstructions. We happen to live in the 4th. The first was from slavery to abolition, right? And we saw that cycle of conflict change, backlash, reconstruction, where emancipation was won. The 13th or 15th Amendments changes the law. Jim Crow 1.0 is established through sharecropping, but remember the Harlem Renaissance. In Reconstruction 2, it's abolition to civil rights. Of course, it is the ground zero is Brown versus Board of Education, which destroys state-sponsored segregation. But of course, uprises Jim Crow 2.0, right? The persistence, right, of the non-implementation, right? That all deliberate speed conversation. That's what happens in the backlash. But what happens? The Black arts movements and African-American studies are created during these times. That's the Renaissance. I hope you're getting what I'm saying. No weapon against us can prosper. We will always reimagine and create a Renaissance. In Reconstruction 3, civil rights to Black power and Black Lives Matter. Of course, representation gains at the presidential level, at the congressional level, some of the seats that you actually hold. In fact, Jim Crow 3.0, really the backlash is his carceral truth, right? There's still the notion that Ice Cube says in his debut album, Why Are More Brothers in Jail Than in College? That still applies. And so the carceral state is a response to the expansion of African-American representation, and especially the golden age of hip hop comes in and provides us with a renaissance rooted in not only Black power, but Black Lives Matter. In Reconstruction 4, which we started out with, the conflict has been named, back on slide 3. Our task is to design the change, brace for the backlash, reconstruct, and midwife the next Renaissance. Next slide. How will we do it? Well, I'm telling you, we got stuff in the crates, people. We just need to dig in the crates of our history and our culture, and we will come up with this new Renaissance. We shall overcome, period. No doubt it's going to happen. In policy and law, we have to modernize the VRA. We have to protect birthright citizenship. Fair mapping. This fight is happening with Prop 50 right now. Yes, Prop 50 is a Black liberation issue. Sure as you're born, African Americans need to get to the polls and vote yes for Prop 50, because this fight includes us. All right. AI civil rights audits, impact assessments, appeal rights, also biometric limits, and vendor clauses. This is a key aspect in education and memory, maternal health, wealth and home, public opinion, and societal structure. All of these are transformational. Just want to point out one thing in societal structure: the creation of co-ops. African Americans must start their own cooperatives. You could use that green shoot from the food growing in the backyard to create a co-op. Basic subsistence, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs is important for African Americans writ large. Next slide, please. We have to expect the backlash and preempt it. So our playbook to expect, we're in it right now: anti-DEI statutes, curriculum gags, preemption, all of the litigation that is happening right now, particularly to narrow law enforcement. Our counter moves: coalition building, coalitions for legal defense, civic tech transparency, rapid response narrative hubs, and mutual aid finance. Next slide, please. In this reconstruction, our first order of business is to build capacity. Your organization, no matter what it is, should be made up of 30%. 30% of your organization should be people under 30. Have to be. Has to be. Because we will not be here forever. Okay? And we have to, in a marathon, hand the baton off. And while we're here, we have to teach this next generation what this history was about. So in institutions and ownership and governance and care infrastructure, when I say 30% of your organization must be people under 30, that's what I mean by care infrastructure, right? We have to care enough to design our organizations to capture the attention of the next generation so that we can hand that baton off. Next slide. In this renaissance that actually is coming, that we are making, we are in, you can see it everywhere, right? You can see it in the art of Kendi Wiley. You can see it in parts of the music. You can see it in representations in terms of biographies, in terms of how people are writing. There's a fantastic biography out by now by this gentleman, Hanif Abu Bakr, and his book is called it'll come to me in a minute. Check out all of the new, right, that's happening in terms of literature and art and all of the rest, because those are the ideas that we have to externalize. They have to be freedom aesthetics. Black is beautiful is not a one-time event. It is a forever axiom. This Afrofuturist idea, many that we saw, of course, inside of Black Panther, it's important for us to use that energy. We have to objectify in institutions, take those ideas, make them into objects, internalize them into everyday habits. This is how the Black Power movement started. This is how folks just one day woke up and everybody was wearing afros and dashikis. We've got to do that again. Next slide, please. Finally, I got 3 slides left and we'll go through them really rapidly, but I want to tell you something. It doesn't matter where you are on the spectrum, right? Malcolm said it in Message to the Grassroots. If you Black and you ain't thinking Black, I'm sorry for you. Now, what did he mean by that? He meant, because he extends his metaphor, right? We are in an oppressive situation many times simply because of the consistent, right? The consistent stereotype and legacy of scientific racism and stereotypes related to Black people. We can hide in the suburbs, we can hide in gated communities, but eventually the rubber is going to hit the road. So again, it doesn't matter whether you're a conservative, right, or you are a liberal. It doesn't matter whether you're a socialist or a feminist. You're a consumer. And if we don't come out of this thing, but one more thing to say, if we can agree on one thing, we can agree that we must boycott, and build. The boycott, we've already seen what happened to Target, right? Lost their CEO, right? You just saw what happened to Disney and Jimmy Kimmel. But a boycott is, hey, Costco came out with their DEI piece and they were upfront. They were like, yeah, we all for DEI. Man, I got 2 Costco cards. That's how we build, right? Punish, quite literally, the people that are attempting to punish us. Praise the people that in fact are attempting to praise us and build our own economic destiny. Next slide. Last point to make before the last slide. It's the health of the movement. I know every single one of you grew up just like I did. Your parents or your grandparents said to you, you got to be 110% better than the best. That is Black excellence. There's no way around that. But let me tell you something. Do not slip into John Henry syndrome. High effort is important, but coping under the structural stress has health costs. Let's be real about it. This is a marathon. And so I want to tell you one big thing. Work hard, heal harder. Create your own Sabbath. Go to therapy. Get coaching. Use arts as healing. Designate parts of your budget for rest. Nipsey Hussle reminds us it's a marathon, but it's the OJs that remind us it's a family reunion. Last slide. Oh, sorry, there's 2 more slides. I'm gonna go real quick. So again, I'll send you this stuff as well. I'm not gonna leave you without an action plan. So for the next 100 days, let's make some moves, right? Officials, advocates, and allies, right? We are in the middle of Prop 50, so that really, right, is a key aspects, right? But filing voting access packages, adopting AI impact audits, ending pretext stops, all of these are important. Seeding co-ops, getting that 30%, right, of young people into your organization, focusing on maternal health bundles. Advocates, create a consumer calendar. We got to boycott and boycott. Let's not just boycott and boycott Target and Costco. Let's go. Let's get to the rest of the business, right? African Americans are mass consumers. Let us use and leverage that power. Recruit poll workers, watchdog AI procurement, land and food stewards, and allies. Invest through CDFIs, co-ops, joint standards boards, commissions, and amplified data and stories. Next slide, which I think is the last slide. We know the rhyme. When y'all came up with this 4.0, I was like, wow, okay, that rhymes with Jim Crow 3.0, 2.0, 1.0. We get to choose the next verse. We get to name the conflict, win the change, withstand the backlash, reconstruct together, and midwife the renaissance our children will live in and not just imagine. The call to action, let's govern, let's organize, let's build, let's do it now. Last slide. This is reconstructing freedom. The cycles continue, the work continues, the renaissance awaits. Appreciate you. Thank you for joining the conversation. The future, as you know, depends on what we do next and what we do together. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you, sis. I think you're on mute. You're on mute.
I would be on mute, right? I was saying, Dr. Angela Williams, what a phenomenal presentation. This information, I mean, even though we have lived it before, our ancestors have gone through it, they've empowered us to take the baton because it, like you said, it is a marathon. This is very eye-opening in terms of what we need to do next. And I do want to speak to the reason why we brought forth the 4.0 portion. And as a media head, I see what's going on in social media, and we're seeing a trend of propaganda and continued perpetuation of negative stereotypes of our people. So how do we counteract that and usher in a light of the things that we need to see ourselves in?
Oh, yeah. You remember that poem by Maya Angelou, Phenomenal Woman?
Yes.
Right? Where she goes into the litany, right? It's the way that you walk. It's that she goes into that, right? She's talking about the Black woman, right, as not only cultural author, but the cultural aesthetic of Black women and Black people. First and foremost, we just have to root our response in our culture. What we do is viral. When we decide to do something, when we decide to put it down, song, dance, music, speech, we already have the oral tradition, the tonality. We have everything, right? Now we have to marshal it for our defense. So what I really want to see, I've been talking to Kendra Lewis about this. I just need to see more podcasts. I need to see more IGs. I need to see people take on, right? You remember what Kendrick said, right? Kendrick said, right? He literally said he ain't gonna be talking about no black women. That's law. Yeah. So we have to use social media right now, first and foremost, to call out the issue and correct the stereotype. This is what, last point, all of those scholars, that's exactly what they were doing, right? From Du Bois to Angela Davis. They were really doing that. If the internet existed, W.B. Du Bois would be on an IG. Okay. Also, last point, let me lay this out for you. I need some more black movies. So all of you that are thinking about it, we have to tell our story. Remember, these young people, they've never experienced this. So we got to put them in the movie theater. We got to show them characters that they love, right? It's Denzel, right? Playing Sin Q or whatever the case may be. We have to use all of our talents, our culture, our skill, and the media. That's the new media that's out there to get our message through and across.
Man, that right there is definitely what we need to see. At this time, let's go ahead and transition. We have a phenomenal panel that I'd like to call up to the stage. We have Assembly Member Dr. Corey Jackson, who is the Assembly Member in California for District 63. We have Kendra Lewis, who is the California Democratic Party Black Caucus Chair. And I'd like to also bring up the lovely Dr. V. Lynette McElhaney, who is the former council president for the city of Oakland and our BEO treasurer. Welcome to the BEO stage on our Jim Crow 4.0 live stream event on our YouTube. Thank you, everyone. The first question I'm going to direct to Dr. Jackson. You served on our Riverside County Board of Education prior to becoming our assembly member in the Inland Empire. And so I want to ask you, how did segregation in schools under Jim Crow limit opportunity? And what strategies can communities use now to ensure equitable education for all students?
Well, I think the first thing is to remember is that after segregation, schools were not made for us. It wasn't intended to truly educate us. And matter of fact, it wasn't really created to welcome us. And so I think that the continued waves of that, we see it in our school systems today. Until we were changing the laws in terms of how a student can be suspended and for what reasons, how they can continue to be pushed out of our school system. The fact that we continue to have a very alarming low literacy rate, and also in terms of math rates as well. I think it is important to draw back on our history to understand that if we really want to make sure that our children are educated, we're going to have to do it ourselves. We're going to have to build the educational institutions ourselves to be able to make that happen. Which is, we've seen it in many other communities, and we've used to do it ourselves, that, we need our own literacy programs after school hours on the weekends, right? We still have the traditions of freedom schools that continues to exist throughout this nation. At the end of the day, we cannot rely on these systems to teach us our own history, to reconnect us to our ancestry and our culture. These schools are designed for conformity. And if our young people do not conform, then they're pushed out. And so this continues to be something that has always affected our young people since segregation. And it's something that we have to realize that as schools, as this Trump administration is pulling resources away from issues of teaching, ethnic studies, and all those things that we are seeing that we can't rely, that our systems are not going to be stable enough across generations for the sustained support and education that our young people need.
And I just want to also point out, you were very instrumental in getting the bill passed for the book bans in our state. So what was that experience, and how did that empower you to be that pioneer for us here in this region?
Well, I think the most important part is that because no one knows American history better than Black folks. Well, maybe except our Native American brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Make that caveat. Which means when we see things happen, we know what's coming next because we know the playbook. And so as soon as we began to see, again, another generation trying to ban books, trying to erase stories, trying to prevent the liberation of people in Florida, I knew that it was only a matter of time for it to hit California. And particularly growing up in the Inland Empire, which is really one of the central foundations of white supremacy in the state, I knew that we would be one of the first to be regions to do that. So before they started banning books in California, I had already introduced the bill because I already knew what was coming. Like, we know what's coming next usually because we've seen it before. Our ancestors have dealt with it before. And so before the governor and the legislature really got on board with understanding the importance of stopping the banning of books, I had already introduced it. They found out the bill existed late in the game, and we were able to bring it home. The idea is that they were practicing using the banning of books for what they're doing now, right?
Yeah.
They were practicing so that they can perfect the strategies that they're using now. And so what we realized is that the first thing you have to do is stop people from being able to read, learn, and be liberated themselves, which is why one of the first things they tried to do was ban books. Slow down the access to voting, and stop and slowing down the access to free thinking, free thought, and free understanding of who you are so that they can tell you who you should be. And so we were the first state in the country to enact a law that makes it illegal to ban books in California.
Well, thank you so much for your hard work and dedication to making sure that, passed. I want to direct this next question to Dr. McElhaney. You do a lot of work in community in terms of public safety, resilience, making sure that we're empowering each other. And so what lessons can we learn from the community-based protection networks of the past to address racialized violence and policing today? You're on mute.
Good morning, everyone. Before I address this profound question, I want to say, Dr. Williams, what a fantastic presentation. Thank you for supporting the work of BEO, Black Electeds of California, and being here in this space. And Assemblyman Honorable, thank you for your proactive stance. It really comes down to the education and the economics of it all. So, Marla, to this thing around public safety, right? If there is a rainbow in this cloud of Jim Crow 4.0, I think it's us getting abundantly clear that there are no enemies within our camps, right? That there is an opportunity in this moment for us to talk with our very educated yet wounded soldiers, our street soldiers, right? To give them something more proactive to do. And folks like to talk about gang banging and all that stuff like it's outside of ourselves, but those are our nephews. Those are our nieces. We're all connected, maybe 2 degrees away, but certainly not 6. With really talking about the importance of this moment and what it means to protect ourselves from external threats. Sometimes it's the external threat that forces cohesion in a different kind of way across all of these idioms that Dr. Williams so laid out: socialist, conservative, whatever, right? Where we can sometimes get manipulated. But when we look at who we are now, I think that people can universally begin to see that there's an attack. We also, in a related sense, because you were talking about these self-protective units, right? There's such an opportunity when Dr. Williams was talking about, I need more podcasts. There's certainly an opportunity for us to speak to the wounded soul of Black men, many of whom, a significant number of whom, have backed this current administration and were devotees of Charlie Kirk. This ability to, manipulate folks' frustration and be able to look at it and say, yeah, I'm gonna blame us for us, right? Especially those who have been system impacted. There's a way in which they don't see the system, they see the individual actors, and they don't see the bigger thing. So I'm loving what Dr. Jackson brings forward, right? In the restoration of what ought our churches be doing now? What ought they be doing? We learned literacy in Sunday schools when they wouldn't allow us to have schools. We learned how to speak and orate. We produced the greatest orators from our Sunday school bench, right? So what ought we be doing right now in the face of these attacks? And I don't want to take up too much time, but just in response to Dr. Williams, his presentation, I've been thinking, like, where are our true allies to beat back? Like, where were the billionaires who say that they're for justice? I don't like using the term liberal. When you say that you are for justice and inclusion and a full constitutional protection of everyone, where were you to beat back the paid provocateurs that were going after book bans in the state of Florida, so that we could organize Black parents, Latino parents, parents for justice, right? We've been allowing these attacks, many of whom are being funded by folks in California. We've been allowing these attacks to go unanswered, and to the point now where, they're disrupting our universities. We got the National Guard on Howard. We've got our HBCUs on lockdown. And our allies, to me, are suspiciously silent and not giving Black folks the money to organize.
Thank you, Dr. V. So Kendra, I pulled you back up stage. Thank you for coming back.
I'm on
I
my
see you were
phone
having
now.
some
My
technical
laptop just
difficulties,
decided to
but
die.
we got you. I do want to ask you, because I know that a lot of the work that you do involves fundraising and working with economic empowerment. In what ways can we make sure, to Dr. Angelo's point of the boycott, how can we make sure that we're building our communities today that supports those efforts and making sure that we're sticking to a unified effort in boycotting those who are against our communities?
Yeah, well, thank you all. This powerfully wonderful panel. So good to be here. I'm in actually DC, and for the Congressional Black Caucus Week, and DC, this capital, like the capital of Sacramento, is all about money and power. And the work that I do through the foundation is really focused on opportunities for the community. Angelo has set it up. Jim Crow really, was the system that kept us economically out of this country and politically. And so, we have to do all the things that were mentioned, really educating the next generation. And I kind of, Angelo and I talk about this a lot, is I kind of try to figure out where did it get lost at Gen X? Like, what happened in the 70s and 80s that the baton is not moving, where we have such a high population of especially young Black men who are who voted for Trump and who are definitely engaged in the work of some of those podcasters, Charlie Kirk being one of them. What has happened? Because we're not spring chickens, we're in our 50s, we're not, in our 20s. And so like, how did we get some of this and how is it not passing on? And I think that people are hungry, they're frustrated, they have to work 3 and 4 jobs, their children aren't being educated. And social media is really the convergence of feeding them information or really non-information and lies, at least because they want to see something in a winner. And that's the way it's coming across. So we have to do a lot of re-education, especially in California, because I feel often there's a veil of where it seems that the progressive bastion of freedom is California, where I think Black community struggles some of the hardest and the worst. And a lot of that is the opportunity, I think, in California, especially, what is very debilitating. And I think Corey's doing some work on it too, is Prop 209, reversing. We have to get rid of Prop 209. We have to get rid of Prop 209. It is being used, it was focused on education, but it is being used against our community wholeheartedly throughout the state in all entities, not just education and housing and the economy and so on. And it was not meant for that. And I think we really need to, Republicans don't have power in California, Democrats do. So the entities that are using Prop 209 to not engage us and get us into, people make money because of government contracts. They make money because of access. I mean, these billionaires aren't billionaires because they're great. They have access to these contracts. And, there's so much of that money then, in our communities. And so we have to really, really look at the political aspect of what we need in California and then the community. I'm from a red line community that was really self-sufficient. And Bayview, Hunters Point in San Francisco, crime is always kind of this veil, but when you really peel back our communities that many of us grew up in, we had grocery stores, we had doctors, lawyers, dentists, we had corner stores. I can tell you of the 5-6 families in Bayview alone had corner stores. Just all of those things. And I think we just have to really look at how do we, the co-oping Angela was talking about, a lot of that is we have to re-educate ourselves into how we can do that. Now it's more difficult because we're not as segregated, meaning then the power of our purse isn't as concentrated as it used to be. But my hope and where I see just light is I feel like we are really connected from as far as San Diego and as far north as, going into Siskiyou, Butte, there are Black folks up there, Lancaster. I think, we can get on calls and have these conversations and really work to figure it out. And I think we've been doing that, really doing it a lot and really connecting in the last couple of years. And, organizations like this is really helping so we can have these conversations and then move quickly.
Mm-hmm. You bring up a great point with reversing of Prop 209, and correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say that the Prop 16 was the yes on education in the last election cycle, and that one did not go through because
Right.
of many who claim to be our allies but are not. So
Correct.
how do we counteract those individuals or those groups of folks who vote specifically in their own interest? And then I want to also raise that, with AB 7 recently passing, that has the ability to help those who of African American descent from chattel slavery to receive a quality education, equitable and accessible for our communities. So how do we bring back to the ballot something that will give us the opportunity to reverse Prop 209 and address the educational crisis that we have in the state?
I mean, I'll start, but I would imagine everyone else on the panel. I would say, they're seeing the reality. I mean, if I can be as frank as I can be on this call, which is normal for me anyway, is, when you align yourself with white supremacy, you get white supremacy. And it's evident right now. So the very folks who assume that our fight against Prop 209 and so much of the work that the Black community does and is doing is because of stereotypes and ignorance. It's manifested itself right now, and so that I think unfortunately where we're in, it's the opportunity for us to have those conversations and to move certain things that people were in the way of, thinking that their alliance with white supremacy was going to be a benefit to them and their community. And I think they're learning fast and hard. It's not, never will be.
Thank you, Kendra. Dr. Jackson, Dr. V, or Dr. Williams, would you all like to speak on that?
Yeah, I actually have authored ACA 7 that is in the assembly right now. That's a part of the California Legislative Black Caucus's reparations package. And basically what it says is that too many government entities, too many people are using Prop 209 as a reason why they cannot direct money specifically to make up for the disparities that exist, whether it's home ownership, whether it's educational services, whatever it may be. But what people don't understand is, and what we have gotten legal opinions on, is that it only says, technically, Prop 209 only says that you cannot do race-based policies when it comes to public contracting, when it comes to higher education, in terms of enrollment, and when it comes to public employment. But the problem is that everyone else says, oh, Prop 209 accounts for that, accounts for everything else too. And it's just not legally true. So ACA 7 basically says, if Prop 209 doesn't explicitly say you can't do it, then you can, right? And so we're not going after the things that the Supreme Court has already ruled on. No matter what we do, the Supreme Court is what the Supreme Court is. But there's whole areas that we can be doing in terms of making sure that Black folks who are descendants for people who've been redlined, right, that they get mortgage assistance. And there's money set aside to help African Americans get mortgage assistance, to help them to recreate their businesses and all those type of things. And so ACA 7 is going through the legislative process right now. It is our hope that we can get it on the 2026 ballot. But Prop 209 is the number one enemy in California when it comes to ensuring that African Americans get what they are entitled to.
Dr. V, Dr. Angelo?
I feel like Dr. Angelo's been a little silent. He might be trying to rest his voice because he let off so strong, but I'd love to hear his thoughts.
Oh, you're muted. Oh, we can't hear you now. There you go. Oh, no, we still can't hear you.
We still don't have his mic.
I don't know what happened to your mic, Dr. Williams.
So I love what you're doing, Dr. Jackson, because we know that many of our allies, particularly those in the Asian caucus, have been, our last, what was it, California for All initiative a couple of years ago. We weren't able to get quite over the finish line with making California. But again, a lot of this conservative movement, this backlash that we see, often gets fomented here in California, right? They started, I remember, like in the 90s, attacking the San Diego School Board, right? Moving and shifting things. They beta tested here, and they come here to raise a lot of money for this conservative backlash. Even 209 was intended to be here, where we were actually seeing significant gains of a more inclusive University of California and CSU system, right? That was actually remedying the white dominance that had been constructed in this nation. It's interesting, they say you can't use race, but they are all about white racism, right? Like, and who should be there and who's not qualified. But so thank you. We're going to be keeping an eye out on ACA 7 and making sure that the Black elected officials are equipped with what that is and what are those next steps that we are going to be taking locally with reparations packages, with justice packages. And I think we need to make sure, the Honorable Kendra Lewis, that our allies are putting money into the hands of Black organizers.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the most disappointing things that came out of this past election, I have not yet read Kamala's book, mine should be getting here today, but was just this notion that I knew of Black organizers who were not getting checks.
That's right.
We had 107 days, and our Democratic allies were not entrusting the people who can deliver victories. You can't just take our votes for granted. We turn up and we turn out for justice. I remind people that the first body that bled for the promise of America was a Black man. So we've been in it from day one.
That's right.
And the fact that we can't get money in the hands of our organizers to inform, educate, to amplify our voices, to put the podcast forward, it's almost like they're willing to dance with the devil for whatever conveniences there are. So what is it that we can do to make the purse strings from our allies more evenly flow, Dr. Lewis, to make sure, what is the pressure that we need to put on Democratic Party? What is it? Where do we need to show up so that they are actually trusting the Black votes that they often take for granted, our organizers and our intellectual powerhouse to deliver justice for this country?
I think, well, thank you for that title, Doctor. I'm not one. But I would say we have to put pressure on them. This Prop 50, we've been really asking, where's the money? All of these major, and I think what we have to really do is look at the consultant class here in California. On Sunday, I was at John Burton's memorial service with a friend of mine who worked for many of the speakers. And this was San Francisco, so it was San Francisco elite Democrats, and then of course the state. Gavin Newsom spoke, Nancy Pelosi, Willie Brown, so on. And I was looking around the room, and I thought, I know the Burtons. I knew, them not so much Philip, the other brother, but I could count, and I did. I counted how many Black people were in that room. And I thought this was not something for the people that he really stood for, and how, if folks out there don't know, John Burton and Willie Brown are the architects of why California is as blue as it is right now. And it was those communities in those neighborhoods, not just in San Francisco, in the entire Bay Area, the movement that then moved to the legislature that has really moved California to its present dark navy blue. And what we don't see anything for the efforts. I agree. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to have to call them out and cause some chaos, honestly. I think we have to be, there is retribution that happens within the parties. Let's be honest. People then don't, they're thin-skinned and their feathers are ruffled. But we have to, at this point, there's too much money going around in this state. And for us not to get, I don't even think we get 1% of those dollars. Corey would know maybe better than me, or Angelo, or even BEO. I don't know if you guys track data, but I think we're going to have to really start collecting data and doing surveys, and then just absolutely reporting out what's not happening, so it's clear, and so we can make decisions based on how how we're able to, how we're able to get contracts. We've been doing this stuff for a long time, and I think it's worse than ever. But that's just, that's my personal opinion.
Mhm. I do want to raise that we held every month we have a virtual member meetup, and we did talk about government procurement and how can we get more African American consultants and contractors involved in that process to make sure that they're getting opportunities. And I think that there are first, there's the educational piece of people who are in positions to even grant the contracts. Some of them go in blindly and they're not really looking at the qualifications, but yet they're looking at, oh, this person was referred here. It's still on a buddy system. So how do we dismantle that and make sure that we're getting Black people who are qualified, competent, and very much educated in order to do these contracted works with government?
So can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I'll take that on. First, it's internal organization. The beauty of the Capitol, and I've been around the Capitol in Sacramento for 30 years, is that, right, you come in, right? I came in as a staffer, and then there's like generations of staffers, right, that have gone before you. Now, there are 2 points to this. Number one, of course, Douglas reminds us, right, power concedes nothing without force. The question, of course, is what is our force? That is the real question, right? Because the force that we see seems to be intractable, right? For people that are allies, we have to convince them. Okay. But it starts with internal organization because that really is the power, right? The power of our own organization is first and foremost. So remember I said that whole generation of folks came before me. Over time, I consulted with them. I tried to learn from them. I sat at their feet. That's an ancestral move, right? To really look at the folks that have gone before you. Particularly for procurement, for state agencies and others, we have to put together consortiums. We have to put together folks that have done it already with folks that want to do it and start there. Before you make the approach, we have to organize ourselves. One of the procurement kind of structures that we've been putting together is for media dollars. So we've been working with the Sacramento Observer and KJ2 Productions and Simeon Gant over at Green Tech and a bunch of other groups, because first and foremost, we just need to understand not only the process, right, but we need to look at other grants, right, to see how is it organized, what's the team. Here's the beauty of it. I love what you said, Sister Treasurer, about the degrees of separation. In politics, degrees of separation are even closer. It's just that no one asks someone else in politics often to talk to them. Then they come in for a bill, they may come in for a favor, they may come in for whatever, but we need to come in and talk about, let's educate ourselves, right? Let's make sure that we understand the process and organize our approach. And the last thing I wanted to say, the good brother Dr. Assembly Member is right about his bill, but we need to use and leverage this organization's power in support. It's alive right now. There should be hundreds of thousands of letters. There should be an entire IG campaign related to this. We should make so much noise that the regional and national media are like, what's up with this bill? I don't even understand. We have to create the controversy. And then the last thing, which I love about BEO, is remember that Black folk, particularly political Black folk, every 20 years have a big tent meeting. You can go all the way back to the 1890s and watch Black people say, all right, it's 20 years in, let's go. We need a permanent big tent meeting where we're always coming together, where the family reunion orientation is first and foremost, the social, the relational, then we get down to the business. Nothing can stop us if we get ourselves together, right? If we approach our own people with humility, right? With respect, with honor, right? And also just be real. Look, we have to support Black things, right? elected officials, our newspapers, all of those have been the organizations and institutions for our freedom. So the Observer and other organizations, they should never have to worry about what's the next thing? How do I get to the next level? Because their interests are our interests.
I love that you bring up Black press. That's where I started. And in California, we have approximately 31 or 32 Black publishers throughout the state. We have 4 Black-owned radio stations in the state, one of which is owned by the Black Chamber of Commerce in Sacramento. And so I think that having our Black press push a lot of the information, they are our trusted messengers. A lot of our elected officials definitely subscribe and receive those publications, because not only do they report on what's right and what's true, but they also uplift in their stories in what's going on with our elected officials. And so we want to make sure that we're spreading the wealth with them. And speaking from that, you know, a lot of where we are today in terms of the technology and transitioning from print to digital, a lot of them are struggling because of a lack of resources. Many of them operated from their bread and butter, which is print display advertising. And so how do we make sure that we're putting them first? You know, because I worked on the 2020 census for African American outreach, and we had a nice budget, but not compared to the mainstream and not compared to our other ethnic groups, as a matter of fact. So how do we make sure that we're putting our dollars into Black media to keep them at the forefront and make sure that they remain our trusted messengers?
I think we have, I agree. I think we definitely have to do that. And I think what we have to do is show the power. You know, California, excuse me, is the 5th largest Black population in the country. Oftentimes in these rooms with you know, allies or so-called allies or whatever, we get minimalized to saying, oh, well, you know, we're just that population. We say it. I hear Black people say it all the time. We're not. We are a juggernaut, and we need to be very clear about that. And, you know, given our organizations, regardless of some of the infrastructures, we are connected, and those are we're in position to really do it. We just have to really have that. It has to be our call to action. When our papers, I've been talking to Larry Lee, who runs the Observer and who will be here in DC. It was probably here already. And we talked about the fact that there weren't any buys for Prop 50. Like, how are you not even spending money? Even if it's not getting down to advocates in the grassroots, how are you not even spending it with our press? And I know it's been done. It's being done in others. So we're going to have to, we have to use these moments and be fearless about it, you know, and really, you know, back these folks in a corner, because it is just not acceptable. We are the margin of victory in this state in many areas. And so for us to continue to be reduced down to a small population, considering California is one of the biggest states, but, you know, at the same time, you know, we are going to be up. We got next, given what's happening in Texas. You know, that's what Prop 50 is. Texas is the largest Black population in the country, and they're literally trying to wipe out them politically. Well, then who's going to be able to fight that fight? It's got to be California in a lot of ways. And so, you know, we have to not get used and abused in this process, but really, you know, take it up and be demanding and you know, as Oprah says in The Color Purple, think about heaven later.
You know, one of the things that I think is important is that sometimes we have conversations and think about things after the fact of key decision-making points. Right. And as I'm listening to this conversation, I'm thinking, you know what, if we would have had that discussion about, oh, okay, there's going to be some money flowing if we pass this, then it would have been easier to have members of the Black Caucus who, if we wouldn't have all voted for it, it wouldn't have gotten through, right? And we could have held it up to say, well, what is your plan for Black people? And what is your plan to making sure that, what is your commitment to getting money through that pipeline? But of course, when we're in the heat of the moment in that bubble, right, we're thinking about what's in front of us, which is why it's so important, as Dr. Williams were talking about, is that we've got to have these big tent meetings more often, especially as key things in history happen, because key things in history are dependent on Black people so that art continues to bend towards justice, right? And so I think it's important to say, number one, who agrees to be the holder of all these various people who can get these contracts, whether it's media, whether it's canvassing, right? Whether it's organizing and convening and all those things, so that we actually have a list to give to people when they ask for it, right? We were having a presentation as a Democratic caucus, and the heads of the campaign were there, and you better believe members of the Black caucus were saying, okay, well, how come we're not seeing dollars being set aside to ensure that we get African American turnout and outreach, right? And if there are, why aren't these contractors Black led? And they literally said, well, we can do better. We are saying we're going to do better. We just need a list, right? We just need to know who they are. And of course, each of us know who it is in our particular community, right? But in terms of the entire infrastructure throughout the state, not one person or a group of people really have that. And so I just think we got to get more organized when it comes to making sure we assemble that, so that we can then be ready to present that in those key times and moments.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. So we're coming close to the end of our program. I'd like to open up the floor for any final remarks from each of our panelists, and then hand it over to Dr. McElhaney.
I just want to echo what Assemblymember Jackson just said. Maybe the BEO is that repository. I hate to assign tasks, but maybe that's what the BEO does, right? And actually, I'm joining the BEO. I'm gonna pay my dues, so you can put it on me. I'll do it. I'll put together the list. But the repository is the BEO, right? Because between now and 2028, this conversation is going to happen again and again and again. And with that strategy that Dr. Jackson just laid out, right? It's the utilization of that leverage, which is really what Douglas is talking about. Power concedes nothing without force. And the force is, what leverage do you have? And we have a leverage. We have a massive leverage, right, in the Black Caucus. Last two things I want to say. Kendra Lewis, if you don't start a podcast tomorrow, I'm coming to get you. The thing that you just framed, right, around Black California, right, that should be everywhere. You should be on the Breakfast Club saying that this is an out-and-out attack on Black representation. Texas is first, California is second. Not going to happen on our watch. It has to be done. And then the last thing I'll say is, here's the interesting part about us. When Olado Equiano, right, who writes one of the first biographies by an African/African American in recorded American history in 1789, what he does to fund the book is that he gets subscriptions before the book is published. So he goes around and says, look, I'm going to publish my whole story. You know my story, right? I'm a Muslim. I came from Nigeria. I can read and write, all this kind of stuff. I'm not a slave. I'm a man. I got a history of the background. I'm Igbo, all of it. People got super excited and they laid down the money before he published it, right? The same thing with Freedom's Journal. The same thing with every single thing that we did historically, first and foremost, starts with our funding. So I think one of the call to actions is that we have to individually become responsible, right? I already subscribe to the Observer, but I'll subscribe and put some more on it. And if we can just get the entire Black population to look at those, I love what you said, Marla, the 31 publishers, and say, this is just coming out of my check, right? Because this is for my liberation. I think that will get a groundswell going. We got to do all the rest of the stuff, But do for self absolutely is the first law of Black liberation preservation.
Let me just say it's a pleasure to be with you and to be with you all to have this very important discussion. I would say two things. Number one, Black people in California continue to punch above their weight. We are only 6% of the population, but we represent almost half of the statewide constitutional offices, right? We're only 6% of the population, but we represent over 10% of the state legislature. And many of us are not representing traditional Black seats. We know how to build coalitions because there's never been a time in history where we didn't have to, right? And so I think that at the end of the day, we have to trust in our political strength. All we have to do, and one thing that we have to do is, we know that no matter what our philosophies are, depending on, just as Dr. Williams says, when history is written, it'll find that they were all important. And so it's time for us to make sure that we answer our own call to come together as one united force so that we can have a organized action and agenda to be able to move things forward. Because usually this country is going to look to us as the moral voice of how to bring the pieces back together and how to stand up and how to speak out and to show up. And so thank you to the BEO for doing this important work. And we need to do more to continue to, for all Black electeds, to encourage our communities. We need more Black-led institutions on a whole variety of things, whether it's political power, education, criminal justice, basic food and necessities. We need to be back in the business of being builders and not just consumers. Thank you for having me.
Kendra?
I agree with Corey and Angelo, and I would say, this is really the moment. And we do, I really agree. We have to become, I think we're organizers, we, consume, but I think we have to become anticipators, as it relates to things are coming. I'm in spaces where, labor, they have a 10-year plan. Housing cities with housing, they have a 25-year plan. And, in certain spaces where we have, some big thinkers for our community, we need to have a 30, 40-year plan in California. What does that look like? It's building our bench. It's, getting resources. And, it's hard because every day, we're just scrambling, even the best of us. But I think we really have to become visionaries of of who we are in this state. And then, of course, partnering with our brothers and sisters around the country. But I would say that, this is definitely enlightening. And I think in these spaces, we have to look to what's now, but we have to really look at, like, what do we want to look like and have 40 years from now? And what does that look like, and how do we do it? Thank you for inviting me as well.
Oh, my goodness. We are so honored that you all have dedicated this time with us today, and for our constituents here and around the country who will see this, because it's going to be in the World Wide Web. So thank you, Dr. Angelo Williams, Assemblyman Dr. Corey Jackson, and the esteemed and honorable Kendra N. Lewis. I will give you your honorary doctorate. We will bestow it upon you from the University of Black Electeds. So, because what we do know, right, is that we all have a PhD. Dr. Jackson, you said it, we know this thing. So I just want to remind you that we are not broken and we are not defeated. We're not broke either. We got money in this state and all around the world. We have global enterprises, and when we have much less, we've defeated an even greater foe. So what I see in our young people right now is that they grew up in the age of Obama and Oprah and Les Brown. They don't know this world of 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. So they're not apathetic. They've been ill-informed, and it's time for us to game them up so that they can take all their TikTok power, all their revolutionary voices, all of their subversive languages, and direct it towards liberty and justice for all of us. And that's the thing, right? Our allies need to remember that when we stand up for all because we believed it. And we see and seize that vision. I want to thank each of our panelists and to our incredible executive director. On behalf of our president, Wanda L. Williams, supervisor out of Solano County, I want to thank each of the panelists and each of you who have tuned in today. Like, share, comment. We are only as strong as our weakest link. So don't be weak. Share this message. Share the hope. Share the hope, because without that, we can be defeated. But as Reverend Jackson would tell us, we have never lost a battle that we fought. So right now, it's prep time. It's boot camp time as we prepare to win in this latest victory. Marla, you've done a wonderful job. Thank you. And so I will turn it over to you for the call to action. Tell people how to get involved with us. But thank you all for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Dr. McElhaney, and thank you again, Assemblymember Dr. Corey Jackson, Dr. Angela Williams, and Kendra, and to the BEO Board of Directors. Thank you so much for entrusting me with carrying out this message and making sure that, you know, we are a united front here in California and beyond. Please go to www.blackelecteds.org. On there, you'll find our events page. We have some exciting things coming up. We will be having some things happening in each region. And then also, if you want to become a member, there's a section on there where you can become a member. We are open to everyone, allies, community members, but especially our Black electeds appointed and our staff that support you all every single day. So thank you all for joining. Y'all have a wonderful day.